Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, colleagues, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. It's a real privilege to join you at this gathering of this Council. Of the 34 nations represented here, I am proud to count 34 friends of the Republic of Kazakhstan. I greatly appreciate your hospitality and look forward to your questions. Your kind invitation brings me here as a believer in the good and peaceful purpose that the OECD has advanced in the world for exactly 50 years. We are about to mark an anniversary of our own in Kazakhstan. In just a few weeks, it will be 20 years to the day that our republic set out on our own independent path. As our friends here from Estonia will attest, it is a steep climb from Soviet rule to the liberal democracy. And letting go of a difficult path, and we did on December 16, 1991, is much easier than building a stable future. But the journey can be made if the desire is there, the willingness to perceive, to learn from others, to seek not only the opportunities that come to free nations, but also the duties. That is the upward path that my country has chosen, the economic path that has given Kazakhstan annual growth rates of 8% or more. And like many nations before us, we have found that every step of reform is worth all the effort we can give it. The OECD goes back to a time when few could have imagined that Kazakhstan would become independent, much less a free market nation with one of the 10 highest performing economies in the world. Still, I like to think that this great organization was founded for countries just like ours, to lift our sides and show us the way. In the hard, early years of independence, we had many problems and didn't have all the answers. But we did know where to look. We knew whose advice was sound and which examples were worthy of emulation. So much of that guidance has come from you. We are not a stranger to this organization or to its high standards. 4 years ago, OECD experts surveyed higher education in Kazakhstan and returned a set of valuable recommendations that we are today turning into policy. We are very long in the Bologna process and on track to meet UNESCO standards no later than 2015. Your Eurasia Competitiveness Program recognizes the vast potential of that region, and it is helping my country to find its own strengths. The one-window principles of investor service, which we are putting into place right now, is only one of many best practices that reflect your good influence in Kazakhstan. We are working closely with the OECD to make our private sectors more competitive and our public sector more transparent. You have shown us how to draw more investment into our country and how to find markets outside our country. You have helped us to narrow the scope of corruption and design effective ways to combat it. And you have helped us to broaden the range of opportunity so that every citizen has a better chance and a decent life. Honored as I am to be a guest at this table, I will confess that we look to the day when Kazakhstani ambassador might join your ranks. More than a national achievement, membership of the OECD would open the way to yet more opportunities for our people. That decision would belong to you, of course, and to us would fall the burden of meeting the mark. In a sense, it's a burden President Nazarbayev and our people took up at the very beginning when success for Kazakhstan was measured in a sheer survival. Back then, we had no private sector to speak of, no currency of our own, a collapsing industrial base and rampant inflation, and not much in the way of reliable public services. Of the 15 former Soviet republics, nobody singled out Kazakhstan as the most likely to succeed. Yet consider where we are today. There are now almost 700,000 small and medium-sized businesses in our country. They account for more than 30% of our GDP and more than 2.5 million jobs. How does a developing country in less than 2 decades get reclassified by the World Bank as an upper middle income nation? In Kazakhstan, the answer is by multiplying our per capita GDP 12 times, from less than $700 to about 9,000 right now. Naturally, job and growth alike are affected by investment from abroad, and this has been consistently strong. Per capita, we are second only to Russia in attracting foreign direct investment among countries of the CIS. And of the $136 billion that have come in since independence, half was invested in just the last 4 years. That is a snapshot of the progress we have made in 20 years of economic reform. And I would not presume to sit before this council unless we had political reforms to match that story. After all, it wasn't just the inefficiency of the Soviet era that we wanted to escape. The shortages, the stagnation, the mismanagement that always comes with the state control. It was a corrupted ideology of the whole system. We understand that economic liberty underpins strong, clean, and fair societies. Our state agencies, administrative rules, budget practices, utilities, courts of law, and other areas of public responsibility are worlds away from where they were even a decade ago. We are making government transparent, accountable, and focused on best practices instead of bureaucratic prerogatives. We are building a culture of excellence with the new rules, new people, and new ethic of civil services that starts with respect for the citizens. In the conduct of government businesses, we are fighting the causes of corruption, not just the consequences. We are confronting the whole mindset of self-dealing and corner-cutting that undermines respect for public institutions. We have completely rewritten the nation's tax code, aligning its purposes with the free enterprise and wealth creation. We have undertaken a nationwide program of social infrastructure modernization and construction on a huge scale. In our legal system, too, the Soviet legacy lingered too long, so we have changed sentencing practices to make our courts more just and human. I cannot yet report to you that our program of reform in Kazakhstan has run out its course. But this much is certain. It is systematic reform. It is system-wide reform. It is uncompromising reform. And you would be hard-pressed to find so through a transformation now underway in any country. Piece by piece, we are dismantling the old machinery and the old ways of the Soviet state, and that is the work of years. We are replacing the legacy with a competitive economy, sustained by institutions that are competent, trustworthy, and accountable for our people. And that, too, takes a lot of sweat and patience. In such a task, you look for the milestones, and we came to one recently in the Doing Business 2012 report of the World Bank. For the first time, Kazakhstan is ranked among the top 50 economies. Here again, a long way from where we started. Perhaps an even better marker of our progress was our durability in a time of crisis, started in 2007. Kazakhstan was among the first countries to be threatened by the global upheaval, which hit us in two waves. The liquidity crisis exposed an over-reliance on foreign debt in our financial system. Then the global downturn dealt a serious blow to demand for our commodity export, and thus to our entire economy. Every nation has its own story to tell about how the worst was averted in those days. For us, it started with a swift action to rescue the banking sector. We raised deposit guarantees to cover 99% of depositors, in time to stop a run on the banks. The central bank brought down reserve requirement, and the government directly supported new lending to small enterprises. In several systematically important banks, we made direct equity injections, while permitting shareholders to eventually buy back the shares owned by the government. Some of the toughest choice concerned two banks nearly undone by fraud and mismanagement. They were not simply propped up but restructured in a burden-sharing framework that held creditors accountable and drew praise from the World Bank. In the end, we managed to protect the public interest with minimal but decisive state intervention. This was our approach to the broader crisis as well. Also, before it was over, we had directed more than $19 billion, a full 18% of GDP, into stimulus measures. We threw a lifeline to small enterprises that couldn't find capital anywhere else. We made focused investment in agriculture, infrastructure, and in the construction sector that had nearly stopped cold. We were focused as well on the people most vulnerable in a crisis and most easily overlooked. We added new funding and programs where the need was greatest. As for the possibility of a collapse of unemployment, this was a case study in a crisis avoided. Some 1 million Kazakh workers faced a serious risk of losing their jobs, and in a nation of just 16 million people, that spelled disaster. Our response included public works, job training, cooperation with major companies to avoid layoffs, and unity of action from government at every level. All the stakeholders worked together as never before, and this explains why our unemployment rate never went above 7%. That was its peak in the crisis, and today it's at 5.3% and still falling. Incredibly enough, we even managed to maintain positive growth during the crisis. Our economy is growing today at 7% and is projected to stay at that rate at least through 2015. Kazakhstan credit rating, which suffered a downgrade in late 2007, was upgraded 2 weeks ago to BBB+. We are now rated above Russia and Brazil and on par with Thailand and South Africa. And to the surprise of anyone who might have written us off a few years ago, we are in a final negotiation with WTO with a very real prospect of accession within a year. Put simply, the global crisis was a test of fire for my country, and we came out of it stronger and certainly wiser. One prime fact we had long understood only became more obvious in the crisis. Even a nation's chief economic assets, in our case it's oil and other raw materials, can breed false confidence. History offers many examples of societies and regions that found sudden wealth in the abundance of a single resource, only to flame out just as suddenly when the demand was gone or this resource had run out. Modern Kazakhstan will not be the joint in this list. We have made our share of policy errors along the way, but we have never mistaken our raw materials as a guarantee of permanent success. Always we have viewed these resources as a prime driver of national development, affording the means to broad-based growth and high standards of living for all our citizens. To support these aims, the bulk of our oil revenues are deposited in the National Fund, where we apply strict spending rules which are modeled after Norway example. This is the plan going forward, a relentless effort to build a diverse and innovative economy. We have not come this far by settling for average, and we have no intention now on falling into the middle-income trap of a static, complacent economy. We are striving to enter the ranks of fully industrialized, high-income nations, and this will require an economy that draws on the talents and energies of everyone. Half of our population is 30 years old or less. Investments in education, healthcare, and especially preventive medicine can go a long way in a young country. We are making those investments to prepare our children for real success in a free economy and better still for a good life in a free nations. In all of this, we have learned heavily on the example of other democracies, new and old, represented at this table. For any nation that aspires to build free institutions, uphold the rights of the individual, guarantee equal justice, and hold government accountable, the OECD and its member states are the standards to follow. On behalf of President Nazarbayev and the people we serve, I thank you for the partnership and encouragement Kazakhstan has found in the Council, and I thank you for all your kind attention. Thank you very much.